So, one, two, testing, testing. Okay, so this commences the masterclass in Winging It. So, section one of the masterclass of Winging It is structure. So, if you're winging it, you must always prepare on the spot a structure for what you're going to say. Because if you're not thinking a few seconds ahead, then you will trip up over yourself. So you need to think of the rule of three. So the rule of three says that almost like the rule you have in storytelling, where you have a beginning, a middle, and an end. With the rule of three, you structure your concepts and even your sentences with the rule of three. So as an example, if you was winging it and you had to do a presentation on, say, fishing, and you have not studied anything on fishing, you now have under a second to think of what three subjects or points you can make about fishing. So the technique that we use for doing this in a winging mindset mode is to simply use the tool of word association. So what you do is you simply take the first three words, even if they are unrelated to the topic, that come to your mind. So I think fishing, I think bait, I think of throwing the line, and I think of waiting. So what I will do is I won't necessarily say those words, but I will structure what I'm saying in a way that supports that. Now, when you do that, that starts to prime memories, and you will be surprised at your mind's ability to provide you with the ideas that you need in real time in a way that seems as if you have prepared for this and studied. So even as an example, I will do this right now. I've done no studying on fishing. I've done no preparation. So I will start with those three examples that I had. So if I was to do a presentation on fishing, I will say, well, you know, fishing is all about the simple rule of laying out what it is that you want and what they want and meeting halfway. So with fishing, you will use different types of bait. You may use maggots, or you may use some other means to attract the fish. And this rule applies generally to anything. So if you were starting a new business, you may think of your method of capturing new customers as advertising, as you sending out your message, but what you're really doing is putting out some type of bait. And this bait or this hook is something that catches them, something which, and by catching them, it's not about what's great about your product. It's not a matter of what do they want. It's a matter of what do they habitually do that, if you place the right bait, will bring them towards you. The second key part of fishing really is about attitude. So you may find the process very uncomfortable. There's going to be a lot of alone time, but fishing is a waiting game. And it's also partly a game of numbers. So even in your business life, what you will find is that you can get really caught up in the numbers. People are not watching my YouTube videos, but the technique that you really apply is just a rule of letting nature do what it does in its own time. And if you spread your net wide, and it said, there's even, funny enough, there's even a Bible scripture about this, which, and not to, not to say this to appeal to people's religious beliefs, but it's a word of wisdom. It's a word of wisdom that is used today by various religions, and these are the most successful religions. And what the scripture says is that a wise man casts his net wide. And what this parable is really talking about is about spreading your investments. So if you are laying out various types of baits and hooks and you're finding that they're taking quite a while to catch, well, if you spread your net wide, what you will find happens is that the law of probability starts to come into play. And what happens is, yes, some baits will take a while to catch, but the time that they take is spread out on what's known as a normal distribution, where on average, yeah, maybe it does take a while, but if you spread your net wide, you're going to get all of the outliers. So what you will find is you will have some now which take ages. They almost take forever. And some may never even pick up anything at all. But then you will have a few baits that are on the opposite end of the spectrum. So when you're dealing with the laws of large numbers, with the statistical distribution, the outliers on the higher end may result in you not only catching them sooner, but you may catch even more of them, and you may even find that you're catching completely different types of fish, aka customers. So, this is why it's very key to apply these age-old principles. There's a concept which I think was popularized by Jung, in which he said that which persists is that which is most true to human nature. And he's saying that, and this is a terrible paraphrase. He said it in quite different words, but what he was talking about is the way that various cultures, Greek mythologies, have persisted in time, not just in the form of their mythologies, but you find it very deeply embedded in the methods of theatre. So there are many structures in theatre which are not well known to most people, but they are based around various themes in Greek mythology, such as a tragedy. So when you watch a play or you read a play such as Romeo and Juliet, this is playing out the structure of the tragedy, which in the occult societies was seen as a form of initiation and a form of enlightenment, because one of the beliefs they had was that death is the beginning of wisdom and that life is folly. So there are all of these age-old wisdoms. So you should really, take advantage of what they call the wisdom and apply it in a way so that you can not only be patient, but so that you can be confident in what you're doing, even when things don't look like they're going right. And the final part of it is really about your tool set. So when you're fishing, you will do what's known as throwing a line. And that requires not only preparation, but a standard set of tools. And, it's very attractive to be misled and distracted by the rare successes and the anomalies such as Mark Zuckerberg or Bill Gates. The truth is that most successful businesses are very vanilla. They are not about ideas. They're not about notable product innovations. They're actually just very bog standard operations of buying and selling. So you can quite easily end up spending thousands of pounds developing this amazing app, or thinking that you've come up with some new disruptive technology, when actually, the richest man in the world right now, he started out just with a very simple bookstore. It just sold books. And within 5 years, they were able to pivot, and I would call it a bit of a pivot. So some people may consider it as an evolution, but it really was a pivot into various other sectors. So it moved from books to just general. Actually, before general products, they had tie-ins with companies like Toys R Us, and then they opened up to just any type of product. And now a large amount of their revenue and profits does not come from books. It does not come from products that people are selling. It does not come from the products that they sell of their own on Amazon. It actually comes from the Amazon Web Services. And that was kind of like a side project, in a sense, where basically they had a lot of processing power and the idea was put forth, and thankfully for AWS, it was able to separate itself from the normal operations and management style at the rest of Amazon. But you know, basically what I'm getting at really is that bricks and mortar stores, and it's what Warren Buffett really likes to invest in. They're bog standard. They're easy to understand. They are tried and tested, and though they are not glamorous, if you do want to get started, these very simple, effective, proven, and predictable tools are highly effective and quite paramount. So there we go. So that's an example of me basically winging it on, something that I've not had any preparation for, but by using the tools of word association, I can construct very simple structures. And even when I'm speaking, I always keep it in mind. And you should not underestimate the power of your, let's say, subconscious mind to do the work for you. If you try to do this consciously, you are going to trip up because your conscious mind processes its thoughts slower than the rest of the brain or the mind. It's in your subconscious mind that, in fact, a large proportion of your thoughts are made, a large proportion of your decisions are made subconsciously. So, you'll often hear of the term, getting stuck in your own head. Well, what happened there is that the conscious mind has recognized that there is a problem that needs to be solved, and it thinks that it can solve it. But that's not the job of the conscious mind. The conscious mind is the executive. You are the executive of your mind. And it's often said that if you want to have a successful business, you need to get your affairs in order. You need to take care of your home, but this is a metaphor for the home in here. You need to be the king of this castle. If you cannot manage yourself, you will not be able to manage others. Because if you're trying to manage others, you are effectively trying to manage their subconscious. And if you cannot manage your own subconscious, you have no hope of managing others. And there are what you may consider to be counterexamples of narcissistic leaders who seem to be able to lead people, but they are often not leading them, but manipulating them, using the same methods of manipulation that their mind unconsciously uses against itself. So I don't consider those outliers or exceptions to the rule to even be exceptions. They are actually perfect examples, because as they are governing themselves, it's actually how they are governing others. And this is also why Jordan Peterson says, do not lie ever. Because if you train that skill, then that skill may also be used to process and coordinate the thoughts inside your mind and lead to your own self-deception. So to wrap up the first section of the masterclass of Winging It, use and utilize the law of three. Now, section 2 of the masterclass of Winging It is pacing and rhythm. So when you're winging it, it's very easy to do one of two things. The first thing that people usually get wrong when they're winging it is that in being too conscious of the fact that they haven't prepared, they feel that they need to throw as much information as they can at others. And they begin to forget that they're winging it. It's quite tragic, because what ends up happening is that they're trying to produce thoughts far faster than they can think them. So the key reason and benefit of utilizing pace and rhythm is actually that it improves your performance and can make you sound as if you are putting more thought into what you're saying. There's also a side benefit, which is that in slowing down the way that you speak, you force others to pay more attention to your words. Look, you read a book, you will only remember, they say you only remember 10% of what you read, but it's actually much less than that. You see, when you are reading, you are only looking at one sentence or small section of words at a time. By the time you get to the end of the sentence or the end of a paragraph, your mind is no longer able to retain all of the information it's just read. So it cannot summarize that well if you read at a normal pace. So when you are really taking care of your pace, what you're able to do is to deliver information in a way that people are actually able to pay more attention. And it also really justifies you actually saying less. You know, I think there was a time when I had prepared so much for this. It wasn't a presentation, but it was a workshop, and I prepared so much. I had various books that I had summarized. I had all these handouts, and I had my own little personal notes, and I had variations of what I could do in case, this thing that I'm doing doesn't work, or if there's not enough people. And what I found was that on that particular day was that I just had too much material, and I ended up rushing through it. And then at the end of the session, yes, the people enjoyed it, but I found that when I compared it to my other workshops, they actually left with less of a sense of understanding than when I paced myself and I'd actually presented far less to them. So you really need to understand that less is more, and that's what allows you to pace yourself slower. It gives you time to think, and it also gives you time to really manipulate the flow. So when you're winging it and you're thinking things up on the spot, the last thing that you want is too many changes in your pace. So by speaking with a consistently slow flow, which sounds thoughtful and sounds like you're really doing a good presentation, which you are, but by committing to that slower pace, you now create an expectation, and you can embody this with a general approach to how you interact with people. So if you almost always are thoughtful, you make use of pauses often, then when you're winging it, people will just see that as part of your character. And if it isn't part of your character, at least if you remain consistent during your scenario where you are winging it, they will just consider that to be part of the performance, the style of delivery. And I've seen it often. I've really seen this often where people are speaking, winging it, and they are trying to force the words out of their brain. So they have these start-stop. They have these sudden pauses after speaking really fast. So they'll be speaking really fast, and then they'll suddenly pause, and then they're waiting for these words to come out of their head. Not doing themselves any favors. So take control of the pace. Pay attention to rhythm, and use that as an opportunity to deliver much better sentences and punchlines, and use that also to emphasize your points. Just trust me on this. I guarantee you that if you do this, even when you're not winging it, people will go away feeling that you are not only a fantastic presenter, but also that they got something out of it, because they did not have to use their brain and focus so much to keep up with the words that you're saying. So, section 3 of the Wingin' It Masterclass. Preparation is key. So, it's a bit of a joke, a bit of an inside joke, because in the art of wigging it is preparation. When the problem is that you've not prepared, well, preparation does not have to be task specific. You see, you can prepare for everything at the same time. And when I say everything, I don't mean actually everything. What I mean is you can prepare for multiple things at the same time by training yourself to be good in a few key general areas. So you can prepare yourself by just knowing yourself better, by knowing what your ideas are, by knowing what your assumptions are, by knowing what they're associated with, and doing so in a way that you can navigate through them naturally and effortlessly while you're talking, allows you to know how to prepare and think of ideas while you're speaking and explore them. If you have not explored your own thoughts and your own ideas, your own assumptions, your own beliefs, then you put yourself at a disadvantage because you now are unable to pull ideas out of your head in a way that flows easily, because your thoughts will be too scattered, too disorganized, too dissociated. So you can prepare to wing anything. Not to say that you will actually be successful in anything. What I mean is you can prepare to wing it generally by simply having a better understanding of yourself, or even just having had explored yourself. Because the last thing you want to do is to be exploring yourself and your ideas while you're winging it. So know yourself. Know how you construct sentences. Know where you repeatedly use the same words. Know where you get stuck. Know where you trip up. If you don't know where you trip up, chances are you're going to find out when you're winging it. And this brings me over to section 4 of the Winging It Masterclass. And this is like one of the most key skills. And that is conviction, confidence, and charisma. So you need to commit. You cannot wing it half-assed. If you do that, it becomes obvious. And on top of that, by being indecisive, you're actually telling your brain, oh, okay, we don't really know what we're going to do. So now your brain doesn't commit to it. Your subconscious does not commit to it. And therefore it will not feed you and prepare the ideas for you while you're speaking. So you need to commit. You need to be decisive in the direction you're going. And if you make a mistake, you just go with it. Chances are no one will notice. People might actually realize that it sounded like a mistake, but actually they're not too sure, because not everything is set in stone. And more importantly, your understanding of the world is incomplete. So you might think something is set in stone, but you don't know. So you need to just go with, it's almost like it's a rule in improv actually, which is just to go with it. If someone says, you're a thief, you go with it, and you now adopt that role. Because if you create too much resistance to new ideas, you've now created a conflict, which in improvisation, that can actually draw attention away from actually what was supposed to be happening, and it's now put more of a spotlight on you. And now you need to justify why you were in opposition, but you're not prepared to do so. So it gives you space. And committing, as I said as well, it makes it easier for you, because now it helps to narrow down the scope of what you're doing. Of course, there may be occasions where you do need to back out. But when you do that, you have to be careful to manage the frame and the pace and the flow. You don't want to back out in a way that feels like a termination or a retreat. You want to back away in a way that seems as if you're almost reintroducing and resetting the scene. You must consider the stage holy, right? So you don't want to bring them outside of the illusion. You don't want them to suddenly start thinking, oh, did I leave the fire on? No, you want to keep them within this context. You want to keep them within the scene, keep them within the stage. So if you do retreat, you need to keep them. So, whenever you're in that situation, take note. Retreat, pay attention. And each time you do it, you will start to get a better feel of how to do it. It may be best for you to do it abruptly. It may be best for you to do it covertly or subtly, or it might be best for you to say, hey, let me just dial that back a bit and start again. And confidence as well is also, see, confidence isn't about you. Confidence is you telling them that they can trust in you. So it's as much about them as it is about you. It tells them that you have something worth them paying their attention to. Confidence isn't about how you feel about yourself. It's not about your self-esteem. It's not about how successful you've been, how many times you've done this, your experience. No, it's about you saying or communicating non-verbally that you are the one to watch and they can trust you to deliver and cater for their attention. So, one key thing with confidence that I find people often get wrong is that they think it's just about how they do their facial expressions. But no, confidence is everything. Confidence is how you control and navigate the space. It's what you do. So part of it is body language, but it's also meta body language. It's how you move about. But confidence is also about you just saying that you are worthy of their time and attention. So confidence will manifest in different ways into, for example, in your pacing, your delivery, and even your trust that you can recover from any situation where you've tripped up. So, there was a time just a few weeks ago where I actually was very well prepared, but I was caught off guard. And then all of a sudden, I found myself just like tumbling. And I realized that, I've screwed up. I had a terrible delivery. I put the wrong notes up next to me. So the notes I had up was for my second slide, and I was on my for my second paper, and I was on my first paper. So I'm looking at the notes and I was thinking, okay, this doesn't match up. And then when I finally realized, I swapped the notes, and then I realized, damn, I've written all my notes in shorthand. Now that probably made sense when I was writing them, but now I'm sitting here and I can't understand my notes. So what kept happening was that I'd be starting a sentence or bringing up a topic, and I'm trying to look at my notes, and I don't know what they say. So then I had to just terminate the sentence. So at that point, I had broken the illusion. I'd broken the scene. So what I did was I just backed up and I just delivered the line again. When I say line again, I delivered a line. So it was kind of what I was going to say, but basically I made sure that I delivered good lines. So I may have messed up, but it's almost like that law of comedy, which is that, so long as you have a good beginning and a good end, people will think you were good. And that's not exactly true. And where it isn't true is where I was able to exploit it. So you can actually be good at various points. So you can have a lot of bad sections, but you can make them pay attention to the parts that are good. So you might be very unprepared on your analysis of, how tidal forces have an impact on, beach usage patterns, right? You've messed up on that section completely, but although you messed up on that summary, you've actually, you may have left them with some really good key points from where you did deliver well. So just make sure you have them in there. And when you do have a good line to deliver, give it a pause. So, and this kind of goes back to one of the earlier rules, which is on pacing. So you can now use that rule of pacing to separate the good sections from the bad. And there's some theory in the way that memories are formed and the way that episodic memory is processed in real time and can almost rewrite itself. Even the memories you have, they're not actually set in stone, nor are they like videos. So actually, a lot of our memories have gaps in them, and when we think we're recalling them, we're actually generating those ideas on the fly. So you'll find that there are actually court cases where on two ends of the spectrum. So there were court cases where young children were, after a lengthy court case, they were led to believe that they were molested. And after the court case, they actually started to have memories of being abused as a child. And it was later found that this didn't happen, but the way that the questions were asked started to modify their existing memories, or at least the way that they recall them. And, these kids actually had to get therapy for abuse that didn't happen. And on the other end of the scale, an innocent man, after a really lengthy trial, months of being told by the prosecution, you're the criminal, you're guilty, this is what happened to the victim, you did this, you did that. And he's sitting there and, as they're saying it, he's building a mental image. It's just what we naturally do. Even if he wasn't putting himself in there, he would be building the image of what is being described by the prosecution. And he made a confession, and he genuinely believed that he had killed and mutilated the victim. And I think it was like 6 months later, the real killer came forward, hearing about this confession. And he said, no, it was me. And he gave them all the evidence, evidence that had never been presented. And it backed up, with his fingerprints, his DNA. So, you can utilize that when you're winging it. So you can make sure that your good sections are so well pronounced and emphasized that they remember that more, because it's more important. And if it's useful, you may actually find that they remember a lot less of what went wrong. It's just too much information. The brain is summarizing, it's generalizing, it's making sense of things and connecting them. Okay, so you make the most important thing the part that's good. And so that concludes my masterclass of winging it.